I'm Tom Landon. Tonight we learn what it takes to make van life possible. It used to be that the typical recreational vehicle owner was a retiree looking to hit the road to avoid harsh winters. But as more Americans work remotely and housing prices rise, more of us are embracing what's come to be known as van life, living full or part-time on the road in a new class of vehicles. My guests today don't live the van life, but their Noke Van Company has established a reputation for being able to creatively customize vehicles for discerning customers. They're also working on a separate project, one of our guests is, to revitalizing one of the oldest structures in Roanoke for new use as a coffee shop. I'm excited to get to know them better. Justin and Josh, welcome to Blue Ridge PBS. Justin von Blaircom, the CEO and one of the founders, you guys are all founders of Noke Van Company, and Josh Urton. Justin, before we get going to talk about the company and what you're doing, I would just like to know a little bit about you. We were talking a little bit before the show. You're a Roanoker, and tell me about what sort of led you to where you are now.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Roanoke. My wife's born and raised in Roanoke. We've been a couple since we were 15 and 16, and so Roanoke's been a big part of our lives. I went to Roanoke College, stayed around, moved back and forth, but always ended up coming back to Roanoke. And so I was a financial advisor for 15 years and then went back to business school and decided to move back here to start a business. And so we started too.
Yeah, right. You guys' names come up a lot when I'm talking to people about entrepreneurs in Roanoke, and I want to talk to you about like what you've seen change in Roanoke and all of that. But Josh, same question to you. Just sort of, how'd you end up being the chief design officer at Noke Van?
I got recruited, actually. My wife and I was a pastor in a former life, so we had started a church in Salem called Restoration Church, and we're still actively involved there. But we were on vacation together. Our families are really close, and so we were on vacation together a couple summers ago, and Juddy just sort of started showing me these Instagram reels and sort of saying like, hey, we could do this. And I was like, okay, are you talking about you and I, or you and Carrie? Like, who's the we? And he's like, I think it's you. And so I just started getting really excited about it. My wife and I have been in Roanoke since 2010. We moved out here to start a church, and Juddy and Carrie just started attending our church, and we got to know them. And so it's just been a really fun journey as our families have gotten closer to be able to step into business together too.
It's been interesting. I've been in the shop a couple times, and I love the feel of it. First of all, I love that kind of environment. But what strikes me is that your staff and everybody there, it's just a really collegial environment. As you started thinking about starting a company, how important was that culture to you in the early days?
Oh, it was huge. It was everything. We started with our core values and our mission before anything else, and it was all about culture. It was creating cool jobs for people, keep them in Roanoke, bring people to Roanoke, help them explore the outdoors, but also just be a kind of a family unit. And so we've accomplished that pretty well with our employees currently.
Yeah, one of the things I love, I'm a big culture guy, so I believe deeply when you have a group of people together, like how they function together is really important. And so when we sat down, we obviously have a lot in common, but we just started thinking about if we were going to run a business, what would we want that to look like? And so there were just values that kind of jumped to the surface right out of the gate. So one is just living the adventure. Like, we both have families that love to go on adventures. We love to do that together. We have kind of instilled in our kids the idea that life should be an adventure. And so that one just sort of flowed out of both of us. The second one was we really wanted to see, we both love Roanoke deeply. Like, I've raised my family here. Juddy was raised here and has raised his family here. So we just love this area and how beautiful it is. I grew up in Colorado. I would choose to live here because it's just so beautiful. It has so much to offer. And so our second value is love where you live. We just want to be a kind of company that promotes Roanoke, promotes the Blue Ridge. And then the third one was faith, love, and family. Those are kind of central to who we are. So it was a real natural outflowing for us to build a company where those three things were just front and center. And so we talk with our staff all the time about how we treat our customers' vans as if they were our own. We treat their adventure as if they were our own. and the whole team is just bought in. It's been really fun to watch. And it's just a collection of random weirdos, what we like to say, because they come in and they're just, they've all got different eclectic backgrounds, but every one of them just identifies and fits in with the culture really well.
Yeah. And I grew up in Indiana, and of course the recreational vehicle industry, northern Indiana, Elkhart, Indiana, places like that, where a lot of these things are built. Much bigger factories, distributing these things nationally. Talk about kind of the scale of Noke Van and how that appealed to you, and also, I guess, why did you decide to start a van company instead of anything else?
Yeah. So that it kind of stemmed out of after I decided to not be a financial advisor anymore. I went back to business school, and so I was going to the executive MBA program at UVA, and then I got a job offer in Raleigh, and so I was the CFO for a commercial landscape company in Raleigh, living here and going to school in Charlottesville, and so I was constantly just doing that triangle every week. So I was down there for 4 days and back here for 3, but down for 4. And so when COVID hit, we ended up renting out our house here and actually rented some land down in Raleigh and bought a fifth wheel. And so
fifth wheel is?
It's just a really big RV. It's right. You have to have a truck to tow it. But in that process, the kids, everybody moved down there to be with me during COVID. So we had 3 kids at the time in the RV with 2 dogs, a hamster, a cat, in a 40-foot RV on some land that we rented down outside of Raleigh. And I loved it, but I got to go to work every day. The kids did not love it as much. But in that process, we kind of ripped out a lot of stuff that was standard in an RV and kind of to make it work for us. And I grew up working on houses, and I just was not super impressed with the way that an RV is built. And so I knew that there was an opportunity to do something different. And so when I came back and I was trying to figure out what business I wanted to get into to merge all my interests together, both finance and building and recreation, I just looked into a bunch of different markets, and the van life was really big out west, especially during COVID. But there wasn't really anybody doing it on the East Coast, outside, definitely not in Virginia, but there wasn't a lot of East Coast coverage. And so in that time, I was doing some consulting, and I flew out to Dallas and got out of the airport, walked outside, and I was like, this is, no offense to anybody from Dallas, but this is the ugliest place I've ever seen. And so then I took the flight back and walked out of the Roanoke airport, and I was like, this is a beautiful place. We need to bring people to Roanoke and explore the same way that people fly out west, rent a van. And so that was a big part of, we wanted to build something that has lower maintenance on the outside of the vehicle, that didn't have to redo the seals every 3 months and all of that, but it was built really well. And so that's where Josh is.
Yeah, Josh, one thing that does strike me about the project you have is very custom. First of all, I know that you have sort of a model that you riff off of, but what's different about a Noke van, and not to make this a commercial for you all,
sure.
but what's different, what are you really trying to do when you're designing a space? It's a tight space.
It is a tight space. Yeah. I mean, the thing that we love to do, and I say this all the time, is we love to kind of find the perfect marriage between form and function. So form being how beautiful things are, and that's where I come in. My my old team used to call me the Pinterest pastor, because I was always looking at things, and I've been a craftsman forever, just building things, woodworking and all that stuff. My dad was a contractor growing up. So I've had a lot of interest in that for a long time. But when it comes to then what we can put in a van, we don't want it to be utilitarian. When a lot of them are, they're just built for kind of the sports section, and we can build those. People that are out there,
they want something they can hose down, but right.
Exactly. In fact, we had a lady in the shop last night. She drives one of those vans that's sort of stripped down and built for the outdoor enthusiast. And she's like, I want something that's a little bit more, feminine, which is where I come in apparently. but like something more beautiful is what she was saying, and not just utilitarian with dark metal and dark fabrics and all of that stuff. And so the nexus for us is really what we want to help is our clients to feel like they're at home, but they're on the road. And so touches of home, things that make you feel cozy and comfortable, shiplap on the walls, those sorts of things, wood features in the van itself. I'm a big wood guy. Like I love different textures and how, you take a piece of maple and it just becomes a piece of art when you finish it the right way. So doing things like that in a van so that they feel proud of what they're driving and they want to show it off to their friends. Ultimately, that's kind of the goal, is that people that get a Noke van are like, just want to show it off.
And I know you all are located in Riverdale. We've had the brains behind the current Riverdale project in Southeast Roanoke sitting in the chairs where you guys are now, Ed Walker. And what attracted you to that area? And, for those who don't know, there's a lot going on in that area with potential housing and manufacturing and all kinds of other things. But what is it about sort of that vibe of that former industrial site coming back to life?
Well, and so we first started looking for space when we started up. Ed hadn't bought Riverdale yet, and so it was kind of like the perfect marriage of everything happening all at once. But we ended up finding a friend of ours that had a warehouse in what's now Riverdale, and so we sublet some space from him. So we started, just the two of us and my wife, Carrie. We started in 2,500 square feet, and we did that for a year.
We used to joke, we still joke, there was just a couple of guys building vans down by the river.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But we were in that space for a year, and then we were working on all the vans outside. We started hiring people. We had 6 or 7 vans at a time outside of the building that we couldn't fit inside. And so we went to, after Ed bought it, we went to Riverdale and said, hey, we need more space. If there's something available, then let us know. And they gave us, Ed's been great to work with. The whole Riverdale team's been great. But the space that we're in now, we've got 34,000 square feet. We kind of painted a vision of what we wanted it to be in the future, and Ed was all about it. And Ed's got a van too. So
I noticed he has a van parked there.
He does, yeah.
So that must be part of the landlord privileges there.
Definitely.
I mentioned van life in the beginning. I think I was talking to your wife, Carrie, and she said, well, we don't live the van life yet, but we might like to one day. What do you think it is about that life that is appealing to more people? And this idea of coming into something that's a little smaller than a bus-size RV.
During COVID, the experience that we had as a family moving into 400 square feet into the RV, which is a lot bigger than a van, but it's still very small. It just makes you kind of understand what you actually need around you. And then, so when we moved back into our house, that's 3,500 square feet. We were like, we just have too much stuff. So we just get rid of stuff. So it gives you the freedom to and we had recently, our employees called us both out on that we had not spent enough time in a van. So we both just got back from trips with our wives in a van so that we could experience it more of what we're selling to other people.
That's probably really important.
Yeah,
right?
it is.
Well, we both came back like, holy cow, we're doing something super cool, because it was a fantastic experience. I think there's a blend of feeling like you're at home, but you're free to just go places. And I'm a big explorer. I think part of the van life draw is the adventure piece, that people can go explore and see things, and you literally just pull over and park somewhere and you can, boondock or sleep or what have you. But there is an allure of that travel and freedom and the ability to go wherever and see whatever. When Jen and I were on a trip, we were just driving on this mountain road in North Carolina, and this bear crosses the road right in front of us. And she had never seen a bear in the wild. So she's freaking out. And so we literally just stopped in the middle of this road for 20 minutes and watching this bear. And the great part was there were 2 cubs that were up in the tree. We didn't realize this, up in the tree right above us. And so we literally just sat there watching this bear, this mama bear and her cubs. And then, when she got a little huffy with us, we decided to move on, not to scare her or anything. But it's that kind of thing. It's the experience. You're just experiencing more of life. And so I still go back to that memory. I have a great picture of her like looking out the window with her hands cupped over her mouth because she was so excited. And so that's sort of the draw for, I think, people is just...
I think for families too, just getting away from the day-to-day is really important. So you guys do, it's not all people doing van life. I noticed in walking around some kind of commercial projects that are, I imagine, all part of companies' branding and things. Was that a surprise to you that companies wanted to have a van? Somehow they wanted to associate themselves with van life.
Yeah. It's so on the commercial side, it started with Fleet Feet, and we built out that van as a custom van, and it's kind of a dual purpose van. So it's recreation and shoe store all in one. But we had a lot of fun with that one, and then that just kind of bridged into other business. And so when we filter through our company values, when we filter through that on what business we take, the company that we started working with was Canopy Lawn Care. It's out of North Carolina, and we do all of their upfitting, and that's just straight commercial. It's ramps and spray tanks, but the big thing was that it's a franchise, so they're selling franchises all over the country, and so we get to build vans and send them all over the country. And part of that is that every one of those business owners is living a new adventure, and so that's where it made a lot of sense for us to expand into that, kind of streamline a little bit of a steady revenue source.
Right, because I was going to say, whenever you're doing one-offs and one-offs and one-offs, it's a little harder to make a living, right?
Yeah.
So like having this is a template that we're going to reproduce is probably a little better.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the beautiful part of that relationship is that we get to come alongside and cheer new entrepreneurs on, right?
Yeah.
So that idea of them stepping out and living their adventure, like Justin said, is really important to us.
Yeah, and I do want to, that because we're talking about more than just the van life and all that. You guys are entrepreneurs who've started a business. What have been some of the biggest challenges that you've faced as a relatively new business owner? And that's, you guys there's a lot of overhead.
Yeah.
What you're doing.
Yeah, it's growing every day. And that's my job, is keep an eye on that and keep track of that. But our space is awesome. That was a big obstacle early on, was finding space, but then it quickly shifted to startup capital. And so capital was difficult because we wanted to, when you start up a company, there's no value, it's just an idea. And so if you raise funds, equity funds at that point, then you're giving away a lot of your company just based on the idea. And so we wanted to get to 2 years to where we can actually have a value, and we can figure out what that value is before we do anything with equity. So we kind of shoestring, bootstrapped the whole business. So it was a lot of ramen noodles and ramen noodle meals getting up to this point. So now that we've been in business 2 years, we've got a lot more options open to us.
And Josh, being part of a startup, was that scary for you, coming from what you were doing before?
No, he gets all the sleepless nights. No, I mean, I'd done that with the church before, so it's just it is different, obviously. But I think just by nature, both of us are risk takers, and our wives would tell you ad nauseum that we just love new things. And so the idea of starting something up with somebody who I love and trust and know well, and all of those things it just made it seem like the right thing to do. And both of us have had that the whole time, even when, we don't have money on Thursday to make payroll, in the last 2 years, and all of a sudden something will come in and we're like, oh, well, there we go. Yeah. But even in those instances, we just continue to feel like every decision has been the right decision, not because we're so smart, but just because we're putting one foot in front of the other and building something that I think matters. So
was there anything that has, and feel free to say no if everything's been great, but was there something you expected, you really thought was going to be a core part of your business, or the direction you were going to go that just hasn't been anything that you're really doing now?
Originally, when I did the kind of the business plan and the projections, it was based on volume of sales, and that we ended up shifting more towards getting some of that on the commercial side, but a lot more custom than I had originally planned for, because there's nobody else doing it. So most van companies that even started in the pandemic are doing the same model over and over again, until they get big enough that private equity steps in and takes a position in their company, or they go through dealers to. And so we became dealers so that we could find people vans, and then building out custom is something that we want to be, and it's hard to do that well and make money doing that. So we're still figuring that part out, but it shifted from more of trying to do 100 vans in a year to then trying to do a dozen or 2 dozen, just really custom, really well done, and then finding a market for that.
I know when I was walking around the other day, you have several vans that are rental vans. How did that come about? Was that part of what you originally thought you'd do? And what kind of unique challenges and problems does that cause when you're actually sending your vans out into the world and then they're coming back to you over and over and over?
Yeah, that's it. It makes for a lot of phone calls, but in the middle of the night when people can't figure out how to use something. But that's a part of what we do. But when we were looking at when I was researching the company to start out with, we found that the market was very barbelled. So people that buy vans or Class B vans or Class B RVs are 18 to 35 or they're 55 plus, and there's nobody buying in the middle. And so the way to get those people in the middle engaged is the rental program. So we're trying to hit all the age groups, build for the 18 to 35, build for the 55 plus, rent to the people that are saving up till they're 55 to buy a van, so that we can kind of
also a good chance to see if you like it. And as a design person, has the rental program helped you kind of increase the amount of feedback?
It gives us an opportunity. One of the companies that we really enjoyed looking into out west, they found that 20% of their buyers came from their rentals. And so we just thought, well, that makes sense, first of all. And second of all, like, it gives us an opportunity to actually build some vans, do some market research, do some market testing for which products we like the best. We started off with one battery and electrical manufacturer that we liked because they were sort of middle of the road. And then we discovered through our rental vans that they're not as bulletproof as we needed. And so we've shifted to another manufacturer again. So that was helpful in the refining process of our designs to get what we want, because we want to put out a quality product. But back to your question about like surprises, the thing that I have enjoyed the most and been surprised by the most was that shift to doing more custom work, in part because it highlighted relationships, and we're big on that side too. So we get to know the people that we're building the vans for. We have a weekly call with them during the build process. And so we get to understand part of what they really need in a van. And that's a beautiful thing for me as a designer, because then I can put little fun features into the van that when they I love what was the show, Extreme Home Makeover, move that bus and the faces, people would start crying. Like, that's what I want to see at the end of a build, is when somebody shows up and we finally show them what they're walking into and they just light up. So.
Because you are involved in a really interesting project that is a couple hundred yards away from here, I just want to talk a little bit. In the midst of running this company, you and your wife have started renovating a little building down in Fishburne Park in Roanoke City. For those of you who live here, know where it is, the old caretaker's cottage. What are you doing down there, and how did you come to take that on in the midst of all this other stuff?
My daughter came to us. She's at the time she was a sophomore at Patrick Henry High School, and she was very interested in working at a coffee shop or having a coffee shop, and just kind of came to us on a whim and was like, "Hey, is there ever any opportunity for us to have a coffee shop?" And then Carrie, my wife, was like, "I know the perfect place. Let's see what happens." And so we submitted a proposal to the city of Roanoke 2.5 years ago to buy the caretaker's cabin, because it's been vacant for 25 years, and it was getting close to falling down, and they didn't have the capacity to fix it. And so we submitted a proposal, went through the whole process, and that proposal was to turn that building into a coffee shop. So we've been uphill swimming for 2.5 years, and we just started construction.
What have you found as you took the siding off of that building?
Yeah, so we pulled the siding off. It's we've got a architectural historian working with us. It's probably, he thinks it's either the one of two oldest houses in Roanoke. It's 200 years old. 1818 was the original log cabin. There's 2 additions that were built on before 1840, but the construction is just amazing. It's amazingly level. The logs are in pretty good shape. The foundation needs some shoring up, and there's some rotted stuff on the bottom, but overall we're very happy with how it looks. We've got a bunch of work still to do, but we've got a log cabin expert out of Floyd that's making quick.
You're lucky to be here where there are things like log cabin experts.
Absolutely.
Drive in and look at it. I'm not holding you to this, but we're all curious, what do you think the timeline is?
Yeah, so it's next summer. We're hoping to be open by next summer. My daughter, whose idea it was, is graduating from PH this year, so she wants to work in the coffee shop before she goes to college. So that's our target. We've got a lot of construction left to get to that point, but that's our hope, is to get it open next summer.
Good to have a family reason for a deadline.
Yeah.
If people wanted to know more about Noke Van Company, especially, where can they go to find out more?
Yeah, we keep, so we've got a great social media person on board with both. She does both, the Fishburne Perk and Noke Van Co. So it's just at Noke Van Co. on Instagram and at Fishburne Perk on Instagram. And that also flows through the same usernames for Facebook and all that. But we've got a website, nokevanco.com, but it all comes from Instagram. So we're updating that every day.
You're expanding your reach regionally, nationally, and it's a great way for people to find out more about you. Well, thank you guys for coming. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Would like to thank my guests for joining me today. If you'd like to learn more about their company, again, social media or visit their website at nokevanco.com. For What It Takes, I'm Tom Landon.